Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for our ongoing series on a poultry training. We've had this training all the way from last year. Then we resumed the beginning of this year, and we are scheduled to continue the training up to September of this year. My name is Daniel Moraria. I work with Unga Farm Care East Africa Limited as a technical advisor poultry. So then I'll request my friend and colleague Patrick, who works for KENCHIC, to briefly introduce KENCHIC, what they do, and as well if there's any member of KENCHIC who is as well in this meeting to be introduced. And then we are going to start off with tonight's presentation. So to you, Patrick.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Good evening, everyone. Happy Madaraka Day. I hope you all had a good day. My name is Patrick Kitotia. I'm a technical representative with KENCHIC Limited. Actually, I'm on the road, so I'm very sorry if my network will be breaking a bit. I don't know whether there is anyone else from KENCHIC who has joined, but on their behalf, I'd like
Yes, I've seen Kenya who has joined. Maybe yeah.
Yes, maybe Kinywa can unmute and say jambo before we go on with the session. Karibu Bwana Kinywa.
Good evening, team. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you, Kinywa. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to have joined the group. I'll be listening. Here in Mombasa is a bit cold. I hope the farmers who are listening will be able to adjust in terms of broodings. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bwana Mushwe. Asante sana. Now, karibuni sana for this series of training. We've been having it since last year, as Daniel Muraria has indicated. For this year, we have taken it over from housing and brooding. Currently, we are doing something on farm formulation. Later, we'll be having a session with our hatchery guys. That will be in 2 weeks' time. We'll be asking you to send your questions so that you can present them to you. For today, I'd like to hand over to Daniel Moraria to go on with the session. I'll be listening. I think I could be battery low. Daniel and Mushwe, kindly take over if I disconnect in the middle of the session. Asante.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. I've seen my colleague Irina Ching, who is one of our nutritionists in the company, who has joined. So then Irene, just a brief hi to our farmers.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation. Looking forward to having a fruitful meeting and a lot of learning. So welcome, everyone, and let's talk. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. So then I'll go straight ahead to today's presentation. Our presentation today is on nutrition and on-farm mixing, farm tips. We have realized that the cost of production have way gone high, and we have farmers who have resorted to be mixing for themselves. And the reason why we thought that we need to give some tips to our farmers and in our farms on how best to do this. And that's the reason why we have this topic today. I hope you'll be able to learn 1 or 2, 3 points. So as a start, the company that had introduced myself, where I work, our main vision is nutrition for life. And we have our core values, and which are self-responsibility, trust, respect, integrity, innovation, continued improvement, and teamwork. So then in our day-to-day culture from Unga, these are the values that we have and we desire to continue to have. So whenever you interact with any one of us, you should be able to get these values, core values, and they are very dear to us. As a company, our business has been market leaders in terms of animal nutrition and health products. And part of this portfolio is on animal feeds, We do minerals, premixes, concentrates, which will be part of our core discussion today. We as well have some animal health products, acaricides, dewormers. These are for the cattle. And as well, we do offer analytical services. So then for the customers who are under our range, we do offer free technical services. This is both analytical and advisory to do with animal nutrition. As well, another branch of the company is that we do offer customized animal nutrition solutions. So then this is across the different species. Now, in poultry, as a start, and if kindly, Irene, if you're able to confirm to me that you're able to see my screen on genetics, please confirm.
Yes, Dan, I'm able to see.
Thank you. So then, as a poultry farmer, we are raising birds of different genetics. So for the farmers who are keeping broilers, in this part of the world, you either have COB 500, you either have Abo Acres, you either have Rose or other breeds which are in the market. The key breeds you're seeing on your screen, these are mainly from KENCHIC. And so then that's why we are so sure about the breeds. And that's why we are so sure about as well the standards of these breeds. For the layers, we do have Isa Brown, Highlight Brown in the market, as well there are other breeds. But again, as I have said before, we are so sure as applied by KENCHIC, Isa Brown or Highlight Brown. For the improved traditional chicken, we have quite a number. We have Kenbro, supplied by the KENCHIC. We have others like the Calro Improved, the so-called Rainbow Rooster, and the rest. So for this market, as you understand, we are not mainly on turkey in terms of rearing turkeys. We are not on ducks. We are not on geese and pigeons. But in other markets, because of the consumer, they are able to raise these birds for meat production. So then our core focus in this presentation is going on to be on the three, that is the broilers, the layers, and the improved traditional chicken. So then when we talk about feed formulation objective is very specific, and this is to provide the required nutrients at the lowest possible cost, and this is based on the available raw materials. This combination of the lowest possible cost and the currently available raw materials generally is done in a software, in a computer-based software. And this is run professionally by animal nutritionists who are able to balance the available raw materials, the needs of that particular species, whether be it poultry, what type of poultry, whether there are other species, the genetics, as I had indicated before, depending on the specific genetics of that bird, the nutritionist professionally is able to balance the nutrient requirement. Then again, this depends with the life cycle. Is it a starter? Is it a grower? Is it a finisher? And then again, the nutritionist is able to balance to do with the production target. What is the expectation for this diet? So then and this is where most farmers lose it out, because you might run to a cheap feed, but in terms of its production target, it's going to take you long. So then when nutritionists are trying to formulate, they want to make sure that this bird should be able to perform lowest possible cost with available materials and very fast, so that you're able to get a good production target in your business. One of the key components when you want to mix for yourself, and this I have borrowed to what we do as a company, it is where you source your raw materials. because raw materials vary, the prices, escalate up and down. So these are the general processes I can say the ideal processes that you as a farmer need to do when you're buying the raw materials. One of it, based on the raw materials that you need on a formulation, you need to identify which raw materials you need to buy or to use. Then again, this is a second step where most farmers are not able to have this step, and this is to set the quality specification for that particular raw material. So for example, maize is not just maize. Maize is supposed to have a specific protein content. It's supposed to have a specific energy content. It's supposed to have a specific moisture level. It's supposed to have as low as possible aflatoxin level. So then that quality specifications need to be set so that when somebody comes and says to you that I'd want to sell to you maize, you have a clear set quality specification. So then based on that quality of that maize, if I go with that example, then that dictates the price for that maize. And then as well, it will dictate who are the people who will be able to supply you with a good quality maize. So then it means there are some people in the market, you'll never, never, ever buy from them based on their poor quality of the raw material. So then, of course, then that gives you a leeway to be able to buy this raw material. So when you buy this maize, again, maize is not just maize. If I can just go through an example of maize, or maybe even let's talk about soya as a protein source. So then that soya or that maize has its own chemical composition. Yeah. And then number two, that soya or maize, it is not yet digestible to the poultry. So then it has to undergo a process for it to be able to be digestible to the poultry. And to be specific, like for the soya, which is a source of protein in most of the poultry diets, there is the presence of what we call anti-nutritional factors. It's like the tannins and all this. So then that soya bean, first of all, has to be heated correctly, correctly at the right temperatures for the right duration of time to be able to degrade these anti-nutritional factors. So then that brings to the point of quality check of the raw materials. So it means if you buy soya that has been poorly been prepared or processed, it definitely means that you'll have a negative impact to the growth of your birds. And so sad is to say that most farmers, again, are not able to test such parameters. So it's something that as farmers, we need to be aware of, that what are some of the anti-nutritional factors are within the raw materials that may influence negatively on the growth of the birds. So then as Unga Farm Care, these are all the considerations we put before we have a feed in the field or in the market. So then we have talked about raw material availability. That definitely is going to influence the formulation. We have talked about the raw material price based on the quality of that raw material. Then again, we are talking about raw material properties. What are the energy requirements of that raw material? Then again, we are talking about the feed manufacturing constraints. So then in terms of your capacity, what are you able to process when and how? Then the nutrient requirements of the bird dictates what formulation that is going to be done. And again, I've mentioned about the nutrient constraints, that there are some raw materials which need processing because before they are used for feed manufacturing. And all this supposed to be done at the lowest possible cost. And just to emphasize, this is the reason why when you start on farm mixing, it will be a very good idea to have a professional nutritionist, animal nutritionist, to be able to walk with you through this journey. As Unga Farm Care, as I said, we do offer advisory services free of charge to farmers who are on-farm mixing and farmers who are using our products. So I'll go through briefly for us to understand what are these nutrients and how are they categorized, so that when we understand this baseline, we'll be able to be better informed on how to go about feed formulation. So the basic categorization is what you're seeing on your screen. These are the carbohydrates, protein, lipids, minerals, vitamins, and water. So water is part of the nutrients, and you're going to go in depth to each one of these very fast. So carbohydrates are the important source of energy in diets, and they make up the biggest part of the diet in terms of the percentage inclusion. So then these are the starches, the sugars, the fibers, and the non-starch polysaccharides. So some of the examples you're having as terms of source of maize, of carbohydrates, these are maize, we have wheat, we have sorghum, we have barley and their byproducts, and we as well have cassava. So I hope all of us were able to relate with this. Even as humans, our main source of in our diet is energy, and basically we do use maize so that we prepare our own ugali or our local githeri, wheat for the chapatis, yeah, So then these are the main sources of energy. The same applies to poultry. It's only that for the poultry, we as well we are going to use the byproducts of these grains. In terms of proteins, which makes around 14 to 25% of mainly of the poultry diets, proteins are the body building blocks. So they have their function in the muscles, in the nerves, in the skin, in the feathers, in the beak of poultry. And as well, they're involved in the main body processes. These are enzymes, hormones, immune system. And proteins are made up of amino acids. So then it means when amino acids are combined, they're the ones which make up a protein. Yeah. And the main sources of protein in poultry diets are oil seeds. These are the, as I mentioned before, soybean, we have sunflower, and then we as well have fish meal as sources of protein. I had mentioned that amino acids are the building blocks for protein. Amino acids can be further be classified into two. First is what we call essential amino acids, and then we have non-essential amino acids. So then the non-essential amino acids, they are amino acids which the poultry is able to manufacture for itself. So you don't need to do anything about it. Now, for the essential amino acids, these are the amino acids you have to add into the diet. So then an example, in poultry, we have lysine, we have methionine, we have threonine, which has to be added into the feed because they are essential. And then the categorization of the essential amino acids, there is one that is very important, and it is called the first limiting amino acid for the poultry. And this is the lysine. So then I know most of you have heard about lysine, about methionine, and it is because it has to be added to the feed as an essential amino acid. Another category of nutrients, these are the lipids, mainly the oils and the fats. These are the concentrated energy sources. They are very important because they are the ones that are able to transport the fat-soluble vitamins, the A, the D, the E, and K. And then again, the lipids or the oils and fats have very specific functions in the hormones production and as well in the integrity of the cell membrane. Of course, some of the physical good attributes of the lipids or the oils in feeds is that it makes the feeds not to be dusty. And again, the right ratios and amounts of these oils usually makes the palatability of the feed to be good. Yeah. So then these are the some of the benefits of the lipids and oils. Then let's come to another category of the nutrients. These are the minerals, or what we call the inorganic components. So then classified into two, we have the macro minerals and we have the trace minerals. So for the macro minerals are the main one, like the calcium, the phosphorus, the sodium, and the like. And then we have the trace minerals, the ones that are required in very small quantities. So we have zinc, we have iron, we have copper, and the rest. So these two are usually added through what we call the premix. So when you hear about premix is a combination of macro minerals and trace minerals. And it is very important to know this because the quantities of these two are in very small quantities. So it means if they are mixed incorrectly, you can have a very detrimental effect on the growth of these birds in terms of deficiencies or in terms of oversupply of these macro minerals or trace minerals. Vitamins classified into two, the ones which are able to be mixed in fat soluble vitamins. This is vitamin A, D, and K. And then we have the water soluble vitamins. These are mainly B complex, biotin, and choline. Again, the vitamins are usually mixed in the premix, and they are usually mixed in very low quantities. So again, this is a very important place because the deficiency of any of these will have a detrimental effect on the growth of the birds. So, the last category of the nutrient which I want to discuss, and this is an area where most farmers have missed it out, is on water. Now, it is a very important nutrient because this nutrient is not supplied in the feed. You have to supply it in the poultry house, in the poultry unit. Just some few facts about water. 65 to 78% of the poultry is composed of water. The water consumption in the bird is 1.8 to 2 times that of feed intake. What I mean here is this. When a bird feed 1 kilo of feed, it is estimated it's going to consume between 1.8 to 2 liters of water. And so this ratio is very important. So it means when the bird does not consume water, it will definitely not feed. Yeah. So water, it is that critical in terms of the growth of the birds. Then again, that water usually is impacted in terms of its intake by the bird, depending on its temperature, the relative humidity of the environment, which diet is it consuming, and then again, what is its body weight gain. So it means the heavier the bird, the more it's going to consume water. The higher the temperatures, the more that these birds are going, environmental temperature, the more that the bird will need to drink lots of water to be able to cool its body. And the higher the relative humidity, then again it influences or it impacts on the water intake of the birds. To be able to measure the quality of the water, there are different measures that you can do. We are able to do a pH of the water just to determine the water quality. You're able to take your water sample to the lab to check for mineral levels. As well, you are able to do microbial load on your water. So then as an example, to just to go into in depth on terms of water quality measurements, the mineral levels in the water influences, first of all, the deposition of the calcium and the magnesium. This is what I talk about maji ya chumvi. Most farmers say maji yetu ni maji ya chumvi. So when you say maji yetu ni maji ya chumvi, basically what you're trying to say is that there's a lot of calcium and magnesium in that water. And what you'll be able to see, it is a deposits that are going to form around your drinkers. And as well, you're going to find the same deposit along the water system. Of course, this can cause blockages over time. Further analysis, if you're having high levels of iron or manganese in the water, that water is going to be bitter to the birds, and definitely these birds are going to have a reduced water intake. We know that poultry don't have lots of taste buds, but it has been found that they are able to detect high levels of iron and manganese and avoid such water intake. Of course, nitrates. So then we find that boreholes that have contaminated levels of sewer or fertilizer have higher levels of nitrates, and higher levels of nitrates, specifically above 10 parts per million, 10 ppms, it has been shown that they affect the bird growth. So then my point is, if you have incorrect levels of the minerals in your water, it can actually influence your growth. So that's the reason why you come to us, you tell us the feed is good, everything is okay, but still the birds are not growing. It could be the quality of the water. So then again, microbial load, if you're having the wrong type of bacteria in your water, then again, it will influence the growth of your birds. So most of the intervention most farms have is the use of chlorine. So we find that most of the farmers we are having are resorting to use chlorine in their water. And this is scattered all around the country. So then you find when most farmers, the first option they have is the use of chlorine, which is very good because it gives you the first defense line to do with contamination of the water and to improve on the quality of the water. But the use of chlorine has some limitations, which I want to take you through. One of the limitations of chlorine is that it only is effective at a certain pH. Of course, I'm going to share much more about what is a pH, but there's a range that this chlorine only works effective, and this is a pH between 5 to 6.5. So meaning, if your water is above 6.5, they're about 7 or 8 or 8.5, the efficacy of chlorine goes down. So in your mind, you'll be very happy that you are having chlorine in the tank, but in actual sense, that chlorine is not working because of a higher pH of your water. Number two, I know most of you have had most of us technical people come to your farm telling you, make sure that that tank you cover it, make sure that you paint that tank from the black color, paint it at white or silver color just to reflect the sun rays. And there's a reason behind it. One of it is that when the temperature in that tank goes above 26 degrees Celsius, and this usually happens when the sun rays, heats up the tank when it is black and its temperature goes above that, chlorine starts to evaporate inside that water. So its efficacy starts to reduce when that temperature goes above 26 degrees Celsius. Again, of course, when there's a high water temperatures, these birds will not prefer to drink that water. Just as like humans, when you want to quench your thirst, you prefer having relatively room temperature water or at least cooler water. The same applies with birds. So higher water temperature evaporates the chlorine, making and rendering it not effective. But another thing happens with high temperatures. The above 26 degrees Celsius temperature of water makes the algae to grow fast. Algae, it is a slimy substance you find inside your water tank. And if your mineral levels are higher, at a higher water temperatures, you're going to get a lot of depositions. What you've talked about, maji ya chumvi. So then this usually happens when the temperatures as well goes higher. We have farmers who don't have a specific dosage of chlorine. So sometimes you by mistake you can overchlorinate your water. So when you overchlorinate your water, you usually predispose your birds to respiratory, to eyes and skin irritations because overchlorination becomes an irritant to the birds. So I had mentioned as well the contamination to do with nitrogen sources. For instance, the sewer lines, or there's a shamba down there, they're using fertilizer and then it comes to your well or to the borehole. The reaction between chlorine and such nitrogen sources forms what we call chloramines. The chloramines are the ones it is a compound that have that irritating smell you find. And especially this example I usually give to the people who like swimming. I know that sometimes when you go to swim, you hear people complaining, saying that today they have overdosed the chlorine. In actual sense, they might not have overdosed the chlorine. What possibly has happened is that the chlorine that was put in water, some people, when they were swimming, they decided to urinate inside there. That is a source of nitrogen. And so then when that combination of the chlorine and the urine forms in the water, it forms the chloramines, and then you get that characteristic irritating smell. So then that happens when water is contaminated, and of course, when this reaches to the birds, it's going as well to be irritating. So these are some of the limitations we have with chlorine. And as farmers, we may need to understand this and be able to put enough measures in terms of making sure that our water quality is good. So as Unga Farm Care, we considered water quality as a very important key factor in promoting good growth in our farms. And it's because, as I mentioned, there's a direct influence to do with water intake level and the feed consumption. And this is what we call a pH scale, a basic pH scale. It's just a measure on how acidic or how basic any compound is. So at the center, which is 7, we call it neutral. So then this is where we expect water to be. Remember I said chlorine works effective between pH 5 and 6.5, here, somewhere here. So if your water pH is above on this side, 7, 8, and upwards, the chlorine is not going to be effective. So we'd want to bring the pH of water from near neutral to somewhere around here so that we discourage the growth of bacteria. And that's why I'm introducing this aspect to do with water acidification, a product by the name of Celco pH. So what it does is that it changes the pH of water from the near neutral, or sometimes there are some waters which have a pH of 8, and it takes it all the way up to this pH of 3.8, which is a target. So our target here is 3.8, the use of organic acids. So when you bring the water pH to 3.8, there are some of the things you're going to achieve. The growth of the pathogenic bacteria will not happen. So it suppresses the growth of the pathogenic bacteria. So because these specific bacteria, Salmonella, Clostridium, E. coli, and Campylobacter, they are not able to survive in that pH. However, there are some other bacteria which are able to survive, but not as many. So then the core pathogenic bacteria will not be able to survive at this pH. So of course, you see a number of molds will be going to be inhibited. A number of yeast as well are going to be inhibited at this pH. And at this pH, it is very safe for the use in poultry. So some of the benefits that you get using acidification, water acidification, as I've said, you're going to improve the water quality. You're going to support the digestion, as I'm going to share later on this presentation. And then again, you're going to improve the microbial balance inside that bird. So this brings me to another part of on-farm feed formulation. And this is the different feed forms that we find in terms of in the market. You can either have your feed to be a mash, you can either have your feed to be a pellet, or as well you can have your feed to be a crumble. So when we mix our feed in most farms, we are only limited to the level of a mash, and it is because we don't have the machinery, the equipment, to be able to make a pellet and as well to make a crumble. So then in other words, a feed starts as a mash, then it can be made into a pellet using a special machine. And then from a pellet, there's another special machine that crumbles these pellets to become a crumble that is usually fed into chicks. So this requires machinery investment if you do want to make them. So a mash feed is composed of grinded raw materials, which has been passed through what we call a hammer mill, and then it is mixed using a mixer, and it has both small and bigger particles at a particular ratio. And to be specific, what you are seeing on your screen on the extreme left on that table, it is the sieve sizes that measures the particle sizes of a mash. So depending with the stage of the bird, for instance, if we come to the first column, this is on a broiler starter or grower. Based on the sieve size of 4 millimeter, we don't want particle sizes to be there, because greater than 4 millimeter, these birds will not be able to consume this particle size, and that's why it is a 0%. Lower down the sieve sizes, you see it changes in terms of the percentages. And this as well changes as you go to a broiler finisher diet, or you go to a layer mash, or go to a pre-lay mash. My point here is this. So then for the farmers who are mixing feed back at your farms, it is very important you understand the particle sizes of the mash. Because if you don't do that, you'll be so happy that you have mixed the correct ratio, but the birds are not going to perform because of the particle size. And so then just reach out to any of the Unga Farm Care East Africa technical teams who will be able to guide you on these details in terms of the particle sizes and how to better have a better particle sizes in your mashes. Forward, if you do have a pelleting machine, so then from the mash, the feed is passed through pressure and steam or temperature, and the mash is pressed towards what we call a die. And when this is pressed through a die, it gives you the pellets. Yeah. So again, for the pellets, based on the sieve sizes, you have different specifications on the percentage of the pellets. So for the smaller particles, you need maximum to be 10% in a sample. So this is very important. And as the Unga Farm Care, when we are producing our pellets, we make sure that we are aligned through the pellet sizes of the different feeds. So after the pellet has been manufactured or produced, you're able to crumble this. And the crumbling is mainly done pellets have been crushed, they're called a crumble. And again, for the crumble, there is a specific particle sizes that is required depending on the different sieve sizes. So again, we make sure that we have aligned as a company to make sure that these chicks gets the correct particle size. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say here, when you decide to mix for yourself, particle size is an aspect that you need to consider because it has an influence to do with the growth of the birds. So a basic tool that is used to measure the sieve sizes is what we call a sieve analysis test, as you can see from your screen. So this is just a shaker that you shake. It has different partitions that will be able to tell you this feed based on this particle size is on these percentages. So this has to be done to make sure that those birds eat the correct particle size. So industrially, in factories, we have bigger machines which are able to run these tests very fast. So on your left is a motorized sieve analysis for mash particles. On your right is another machine that tests how tough or how strong is the pellet. It's called a pellet durability index test. So these are industrially available in the factory to be able to make sure that the kind of the quality pellet that you get is of good quality. So I have talked a lot about particle size. but I'd want now to give you more details in terms of how this influences the poultry performance. So then why this particle size? So particle size we know is in terms of the feed structure is the size as I have mentioned, and as well the internal binding strength or hardness of feed particles. So one of the rules is that any particle size that is above 1 millimeter, it is going to stay in the gizzard, and this will stimulate good gizzard functioning. So then I'll go into details into this, and I think it is important for us to understand this. So the first component, what you're able to see on your screen, is a general digestive tract of a chicken, of poultry. So feed enters through the mouth, the beak, down the esophagus. It is stored temporarily in the crop so that when you press the crop, you can feel there's some feed. Then it goes to what we call the proventriculus. This is where secretion of acid is done, and it is done so that specifically protein can start its digestion process here. So a lot of hydrochloric acid is secreted in the proventriculus, and then the feed goes now to the gizzard. Now, in the gizzard, what it does, it is like a mechanical structure that presses feeds, and it does so in feeds which have bigger particle size. Remember, we have talked about above 1 millimeter of particle size. So we require such particle sizes to still remain in the gizzard so that this gizzard is able to function correctly. So if the gizzard does not develop correctly, it means down here, you'll either have these two structures. So then on the upper part is what we call the proventriculus, like here. And then on the lower part is what we call the gizzard. So our focus in having the correct particle size, it's going to influence the growth of these gizzards. So our target is to have a small proventriculus here, and then a good, well-developed gizzard. So this bird, I can tell you, in terms of his digestion, is going to be super. This, on the other hand, it will have a very poor digestive system processes inside it. So then that's why particle sizes is very important. Now, the gizzard development, as I've said, the thicker muscle wall of the gizzard is influenced by the particle size. So when you are having a good gizzard, it means the secretion of the juices will be good, and that bird is going to digest well, and that bird is going to perform well. This is what I'm trying to say in a nutshell. So you have very good gizzard here, and you have a very small, nice proventriculus. This bird will perform well. And this happens when the coarse feed, the particle size of the feed is well balanced to be able to stimulate this gizzard development. The opposite is true. You have a wrong, finely ground feed, you get such a proventriculus and not well developed gizzard, and of course you're going to get bad digestion in this bird. So that's in a nutshell the essence of feed particle sizes and digestion. So in regards on our commercial feeds, most of you know that we have the Fugo range for the poultry across, and every day we make sure and try that to make sure that these feed are of the highest quality to make sure that your bird perform. But today, our focus is mainly for the farmers who, for instance, have been invested to make sure that they mix their own feed in the farm. So as Unga Farm Care, we have 3 categories of products that is meant for farmers who are doing on-farm mixing. The first is the concentrates, second are the macro packs, third are the premix. Start with just to give you a distinction between the 3 options that are available for farmers who are mixing for themselves is that we have this category that we've talked about in terms of nutrients. energy, protein, macrominerals, amino acids, additives, vitamins, trace minerals. And then we have the three categorization, the concentrate, the macro pack, and the premix. So the first option is the concentrate. Let me start on my extreme right. So then if you do want to mix feed at your farm, you have the option of the concentrate. So then what are the concentrates? Concentrate is made up of everything, protein, macrominerals, all this, with an exception of energy, as you can see. So where we are saying farmer add this, what you need to go look out for is the energy source. And for the energy source here, we are talking about maize, and as well, you're talking about maize byproducts. These are like the maize germ, the maize bran, and all this. But the rest of the components is already mixed in the Viminera concentrate. So we are going to give you a formulation to tell you that please mix maize this quantity, please mix maize germ this quantity, and add the Viminera concentrate for you to mix for yourself. The another level is on the macro packs. So in addition to the energy, you'll require as well protein. But the rest of the components, this is the macro minerals, amino acid, additives, vitamins, all these has been mixed in what we call the Vimera macro pack. So as a farmer, what you're going to need is the protein sources, soya, and as well the energy sources. These are the maize and the maize byproducts. The third level is on the premix. So then the premix is just a combination of vitamins and the trace minerals, as I said. So as a farmer, you'll require to look out for the entire things. That is the energy, protein, the macro minerals, the amino acids, and the additives. So what are some of the recommendations for farmers who are starting mixing? So then we recommend farmers to consider concentrate, Viminera concentrate, because number one, most of the ingredients have already been mixed. You only need to mix very few ingredients. So what are these concentrates? In the market, they look like this. So then we have the poultry starter concentrate, we have the broiler finisher concentrate, we have the pullet stroke layer concentrate, and then we as well have the poultry breeder concentrate. So I'm going to go through some of the formulations that we might be having or we propose for this concentrate so that you are able to understand the concept behind the concentrate. So then assume we want to make a diet for broilers. And our diet is a 3-phase feeding program for broilers, sorry. And we are going to be on mash, not crumbs, pellets. So as a start, we are going to start with maize. So our inclusion ratio is going to be 47.50. This maize is going to be the broken maize. Then we'll mix with wheat bran at 15%, and then we are going to use Viminera poultry starter concentrate at 7.5%, and that is enough for the broiler starter concentrate. So then this bird will be able to feed this for the first 10 days, and then you're going to transition to broiler grower concentrate mixed on those ratios. So just need maize germ, and then the broiler finisher concentrate, and those percentages. And this bird is going to feed up to day 24. And then from day 25, the finisher concentrate mixed at maize 50%, maize germ 15%, and the broiler finisher that 5% will be able to be given for the birds from 25 days up until when you're going to slaughter. So then this one is available for you to have. So for the farmers who are who are rearing layers, again, for the chick mash, you're able to make it for yourself. You use maize that is broken, small particles at 30%, use maize germ at 32.5%, and then use the Viminera poultry starter at that percent to make your chick mash that can be fed for the first 8 weeks. Then when you come to the growers, you can use maize. You use maize germ at the 53.5%, and you add a bit of stock feed lime, the limestone at 1.50%, and then you add the Viminera layer at 25% to make your growers mash. These are going to be fed to the pullets up until point of lay. Then when they start egg production, 2% or 5%, You mix with maize for 21%, maize germ 25%, and then limestone, you put it at 9%, and then you mix with the mineral layer concentrate at 25%. So then this is a concept that makes mixing easier, and you reduce the errors that comes with mixing a lot of ingredients, and it makes your work easier to make sure that at least these birds will be able to get the correct nutrients in their diets. For the kienyeji as well, the ratios are available and you'll be able to share. For the chick mash, the kienyeji growers, and recently we have introduced the kienyeji finisher mash. This can be shared with any of our technical teams whom you're able to reach out for these formulations. Now, for the people who are breeding, because we know there are people who are breeding birds for the eggs to hatch into chicks, there's a specific formulation that you need to use, and especially if you do have parent stock, and it's called the breeder. And this is because the eggs that you anticipate to have, they're going to be hatching eggs. So then there's a special formulation for such farmers. So then that brings me to the end of this presentation. I hope there's some farmers who have asked some questions. So then I'm going to give this opportunity to any questions. So Patrick, if you're able to help me out on the question session time, or Irene, if you're able to read the questions, we'll be able to try and attempt these questions. To you, Irene.
Raphael has raised his hand. Probably you can give him a chance to ask.
Raphael, to you. Unmute.
Okay, thank you very much for organizing this meeting, because we have a couple of farmers here who, other than myself, will have a question to ask. Now, I'll quickly go. I actually have a couple of questions. It's not one. So I don't know how we're going to do it. Do I ask all of them, or do I ask one by one and then you answer them as we go?
Yeah, so then please do, because we have only 7 minutes remaining. Carry on with the questions.
Okay. Now, the first one, maybe could you just give us a general idea of the potential savings a farmer will make between mixing down feeds using the mineral concentrate and probably buying the already packaged commercial feeds? That's the first one. Then the second one, I'm made to understand that there is a similar product concentrate that has been manufactured in Zimbabwe, okay? And for that particular product, the only thing you need to add is maize. That's all. Everything else has been added. So, like in your case, whereby I think you said you need to add maize bran with bran oil, and I think I saw somewhere, is it lime? This one from Zimbabwe, I'm made to understand everything is there. The only thing that you need to add is maize. Of course, there's a ratio on how that mixing is done. So I'm not sure whether you're aware of anything like that. And if that is the case, are you considering probably improving the product to that level? Okay, just probably to eliminate the mixing errors, to eliminate further mixing errors that farmers normally do have. Okay, that's then my third question is, can you probably share a catalog of the cost of these concentrates?
Thank you for the questions, Raphael.
Yes.
So then if I may start with the first one, is that first of all, the mixing ratios depend with the species. And as I clearly indicated, we are mixing based on the lowest cost possible for you. So then that's why even you choose the option of lowering your costs using, mixing yourselves at the farm. For you to be able to do that, you need to combine maize and the byproducts. Yeah. So then for any formulation that has maize only, I can tell you is going to be very expensive. We can actually formulate for you just using maize. Yeah. But in terms of the costing is not going to make sense. So that's why in livestock feed, you combine the use of maize and its byproducts. To answer the question about why you are mixing for yourself, it's because there are farmers, for instance, who are able to easily access maize. They have a plantation of maize, so then maize, for instance, is easily available, accessible to them. There are farmers as well, the raw materials, the byproducts as well, accessible to them. So then that's why they go into on-farm mixing. The benefits in terms of the savings from a commercially prepared feed to that of on mixing comes in terms of the cost of your raw materials. So then if the cost of your raw materials are fairly okay, so then of course you mix for yourself. If you're not able to get the raw materials at a good price, then that's possibly not going to be your direction. I hope I have answered you that. In terms of the prices for the concentrates, kindly Raphael, reach out to any of our Unga farm care team. We'll be able to share the prices with you based on your location. I'm going to go to the question chat function just to answer some few questions. Vitalis is asking, the effect of particle size is critical. At what stage of growth is this managed? So then the particle size of a bird starts from the time it's a day-old chick. So, and there are standards in terms of the particle size from when that bird is a day old up until when you slaughter if it's for meat, or up until when it starts producing eggs if it's for egg production. So then the control of the particle size is critical from the day-old chick. I hope that suffices, Vitalis, in terms of to answer that question. Then again, Mwakulomba asks for the Kenbro chicks. Kenbro chicks, these are the improved traditional chicken. Are there crumbles or is just the mash? So then for the Kenbro chicks, currently as Unga Farm Care, we have the mash diet. So we don't have currently the crumbles for the chicks. So currently we're just having the mash diet. James Ngodo is saying, kindly share your second last slide. So then I believe this is in terms of formulation. James Ngodo, just reach out to any of the Unga Farm Care team. They'll be able to share all this formulation with you. I don't know, Irene, if you're able to see more questions, you can help me out on this.
Yes, Dan. I think James is also asking for your contacts. So probably you can type in your email address and maybe your contact so that they can reach you. Stephen is asking why is that there is no pellets for layers bird? Why? I hope you've understood the question, Dan.
Okay, yeah. So then Stephen is asking why is that there are no pellets for layer birds? Now, depending, okay, for the layer birds, I think you mean for layer birds in production, right? So then these are birds that is laying eggs, yeah? So then there's what we call feed completion time. So then when you feed layers with pellets, they are going to eat a lot fast, and then they are going to stay for a longer time without feeding, making them to be able to start having funny behaviors like pecking and all this. So it is usually recommended for the layers in production to be fed on mash so that they can have a lot of time when they are feeding. However, when they are chicks, you can have an option of whether giving them a crumble or a mash diet. To you, Irene.
Thanks, Dan. I think well answered. So Mwakuloba is asking, so what is the preferred type of feed for the Kenbro?
Please use, if you do want to mix for yourself, you can have the formulations for the concentrates. If you do want to buy our commercial feed, we have the Fugo Kienyeji range for the chicks, for the grower, and for the layers. So then just visit any agrovet near you, you'll be able to get the Fugo Kienyeji range.
Okay, to the next one. A very good presentation. Kindly, now that you have recorded the presentation, we'll appreciate if you share with us, please. Wambua is requesting. I think
so then Wambua, Wambua, we do have a WhatsApp platform for poultry farmers across the country. So then based on my contact, just reach out if you're not in any of the WhatsApp forum. We'll add you there. And then we do share all this presentation in that forum so that you'll be able to follow up with the presentation. Back to you, Doreen. Irene.
the other one, I think, Lisha, you've already been answered. I think the contacts are given. Nyamongo is asking, thank you. Which type of maize should I use? Can the maize that has begun to be infested with weevils or has aflatoxin be used? Oh, yeah, I think
Irene,
it's that.
you can attempt this, Irene.
So you've understood the question?
Yes, so then I think Nyamongo has a maize that has been infested by weevils, and
Yes.
he's as well not so sure whether they have aflatoxin, but he can
Yeah.
see that they are infested by weevils. So then he's asking, can you use such?
Yeah. So I think just for a quick answer on that, I think it will definitely affect the birds, and if it has aflatoxin, you're not sure. It will be preferable if you can take it to the nearest laboratory, accredited laboratory, have it analyzed, and they give you a way forward. If the aflatoxin levels are below the it's below the it's not above the recommended, let me say above the recommended ppbs, which is always 10-15, then you need to reject it. But if it's within, I think you can use it. But first of all, go for analysis if you have to and you need to use it. I think that is my take on the same.
Clearly that is true. But if the maize already has been infested, first of all, fumigate the maize so that you're able to eradicate the weevils. Give it the required time to stay before use for the livestock feeds.
Okay, I think the other Dorothy is asking, kindly share the slides. So I think that one, Dan, you'll get in touch.
So please make sure, Dorothy, you are within any of the WhatsApp group where we do share currently all this information. So then based on the numbers that has been given, if you're not in this platform, we'll be able to add you based on where your farm location is, and then you'll be able to get all this material, including the recorded session.
Okay, Susan, I think is very grateful, very informative. Thank you. We keep learning. Stephen, there are some farmers that give layers chick starter pellets or replace chick mash. What is the effect of this? There are some farmers that give layers chick starter pellets or replace chick mash. To replace chick mash. What is your what is the effect of this?
So then a chick starter pellet is meant for a broiler bird, correct? And then a chick mash is meant for a layer bird. So then the genetics of a layer bird is completely different from that of a broiler bird. And so then when nutritionists are formulating this diet, they have in mind we are formulating for a broiler. And for a broiler diet, we know in terms of it requires very high energy requirements. So then that feed is specific for such. The reason why most farmers do this, they say that they want these chicks to grow fast. There will be no harm. However, the only harm you're going to get, it is on the milestone of this layer bud, because you're pushing a lot of energy on this bud, and this bud, genetically speaking, is not wired to grow that fast. So you're going to be very happy that the bird will attain the weight, but in its future life, you're going to negatively influence its milestone, because there's a specific milestone for a layer bird. And that is the reason why we recommend farmers, please just use diets meant for a layer bird. So improve on your efficiencies in terms of the farm. If you are overstocking, if you don't have enough feeders for the chicks, make sure you improve this so that your birds are able to grow just using the correct Fugo chicken duckling mash. I think, Irene, we are short of time. We have gone way past time by 6 minutes. I don't know whether you have any addition, Irene, before we wind up.
I think you can just brief the ones who are not in the group how they can join, and probably follow up the conversation via the group that you are talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so then just send a message to that number you're seeing on the chat function. If you're not in any of the WhatsApp group forum across the country, just mention where your farm location is. We'll be able to add you, and then you'll be able to get all this information. So thank you once again for joining us. It was a Madaraka day. I hope you had a very, very good day. But we appreciate that you chose time to be able to join us this evening. And so then it's just to wish you all a great evening, enjoy your dinner, and hoping that you're going to have to be better in terms of your farming. So from Unga Farm Care and KENCHIC, it's a big bye-bye from now.
Thanks, and bye, everyone.